Go.
Okay, thanks for joining us. And Jay, thanks for sponsoring and setting all this up. And Ron Lichty, who I saw on here, who was my introducer into the group. So I'm a sort of pure play software product management guy here in San Francisco, Silicon Valley for a long time. I'll do some introduction in a second. I'm going to try to stick to the product side of the Agile problem. And where that fits in, because in my many travels, what I see is that there's groups who are doing good Agile, but the outcome doesn't matter because we're building the wrong things. And there are groups that are doing good product, but it doesn't matter because they can't get things built on time or shipped. And so we're going to try to find the intersection of those things. And just for fun, let's see if we can share out some slides. So let's find this and go back to our title slide. Hang on. If we did this right, we're seeing the title slide?
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay, so let me unshare and start again.
I see it now.
Okay.
No, I lost you again.
All right, it's delay time is what it is. Okay, good. So anyway, here's the title slide. I will put the PDF for the slides into the chat box in a little bit. In fact, let me do that now in case anybody wants to grab the hard copy of the slides or whatever the equivalent is. There you go. Good. All right. So we're going to talk about doing the right things versus doing them right. And I'm going to make that distinction as crisp as I can as we go ahead. Just a quick introduction for me, for those who don't know me. By the way, the picture on the right is a book of mine from 2008 on software product management. We'll be giving away copies of the book when we have quiz questions here, where I'm going to ask people to type into the chat box good answers to the questions I've got. So if you're looking for a book, that's the way to get one, and just let me know what the electronic version is that you want. Again, I put bold on product because I'm going to be making the distinction over and over again in the next hour between product and project or program. Different things, both important, not the same. The thing I do a lot lately is what we call smoke jumper VP of product. What that means is, particularly for Bay Area firms, software firms that forgot to have someone in charge of their product management team, or misplaced that person, or in general, or in a world of hurt, I'll drop into a company, I'll parachute into a company for a quarter or two, straighten out their product management team and whatever else needs straightening out, and then help hire my replacement in so I get to go home. And the key question one asks almost all the time, if you're working at a company that builds software as its product, because if we build software and our customers don't buy it, it turns out we all lose our jobs and we've got to work somewhere else. So the key question that product folks ask themselves and everybody else all day long is, what does my customer segment want? Notice I don't say individual customer or individual client. There must be a segment of folks who want to pay for something that I'm going to build, and there has to be enough of them that I can make a market building some product. If we can't answer that question, we shouldn't proceed to any of the building because we're probably out of business before we get there. I did 6 startups in my day, mostly enterprise and datacom and infrastructure. I did a couple of turns as a CEO and a founder, and other things that are relevant, again, from a pure product guy like me. I threw the first product camp in 2008 down in Sunnyvale. Been blogging on software product management since 2002, because that's when blogs arrived. The book is from 2008, and I've really been involved in the Agile movement since, I don't know, roughly 2005 or 2006. But again, mostly from the product side and not from the developer or engineering side. Good, let's keep rolling. All right. So here's our agenda, 3 points to make and then some takeaways. The bold one, of course, is what we're going to do first. My observation is that very few folks actually know what product managers do or have seen one do them well. And so we're going to try to define a little bit of what a product manager does or is before we try to do the third thing, which is contrast it with how the Scrum books and scrum.org kinds of groups define product owner. This is really important. I don't care what we call ourselves, I care what we do. So we're going to carefully dissect the product manager role or job, and then we're going to match that later on to the product owner. I'm going to take the position that Agile software development is really an inner loop discussion where the outer loop is product and market and customers and profitability and corporate stuff. So we'll draw that carefully. Then after that, product managers, product owners, and some takeaways. Good. If anybody's having audio issues, let us know, put something in the chat box. If not, we'll keep going. All right, so we're gonna do a quick quiz. And in fact, I'm going to grab a URL here and put it into the chat box so all of you can see it. And we're gonna do a quick word poll, right? We're gonna do a word cloud poll where I'm gonna ask everybody to grab that URL and type in a few words of what you think product managers do. And then of course we'll dissect that. And if I'm really clever, I'm gonna come back to here and you're going to be able to see whatever your answers are. Okay, so nobody's come in yet, but there's a URL there. You can see it at the top of the screen. You can also grab it. Okay, we obsess over customers. Good, what else do we do? Customer needs, market needs, right? Stakeholders, customers, meet, decisions, shit, yes, shit is what we do, requirements, generate, gather, right? Good, keep going. Prioritize customers, we sure do prioritize customers. Product needs, management, excellent. Okay, this stuff actually works. I did a test run and I couldn't get this to work the first 5 or 6 times. All right, we certainly see customers at the center of this, right? Prioritize and manage and needs and expectations. The biggest word is customers. Okay, I'll give everybody 1 more minute to do this and then we're gonna back out 2 slides. All right, pretty good. I was afraid we weren't gonna get this right. All right, delight is handy, understand is handy, satisfy and analysis. Profitable is really good, strategize is good, although the British spell it I-S-E. Okay, so we're gonna put that to rest. We're gonna come back to our slide deck. There we go. And I'm gonna give you my own translation now of what product managers do. Okay, so some people are text people, some people are chart and input output diagram folks. We're gonna do a little of both. So for me, again, I mostly focus on companies that build software as their primary product. So they're software companies, as opposed to banks or airlines or government agencies or other folks who usually consider technology a cost center instead of a profit center, right? So what does a product manager do for commercial or revenue software? The ands are really key here. We don't just drive delivery of something. If we deliver something that doesn't have market acceptance and users and revenue, then we get demoted or we lose our jobs, right? We target market segments, really, really important, not individual customers and buyers. If we're building for one customer or one user or one client, I would say we're a professional services firm, we're a contract firm, we're a development shop. Most of those companies don't need product managers because they do the thing that one customer pays them to do. And even if the customer doesn't find it useful, they still get paid, right? Inevitable competing priorities. I've never been at a company that had enough engineers or enough developers or enough throughput or enough velocity. It's never gonna happen. There's always more things to do than we could possibly ever do. So product managers here are going to be focusing on the fact that we can't get it all done. We can't even get close to getting it all done. And so we have to make lots and lots of hard choices. By the way, I'm taking the URL for the PDF, I'm putting it in the chat log. Anybody who wants the slides, they're right there, right? So, and probably most important here is somebody has to define what success looks like other than revenue for a major piece of software or technology we built. It's got to do something that we're going to measure. And ideally, we define and measure those things before we start so we can see the change. There's a lot of tendency to do our metrics afterwards so we can show success, but good product managers are all over defining success before we start. Because if we're not sure how to measure it, we probably shouldn't do it, right? And then if you're in an organization where you're doing internal strategic development, right? You still probably have to get funding for things, acceptance criteria, adoption metrics, right? If you're building something for a business unit and it's not going to put it into use, or they're not going to put it to work, then it's waste, right? And again, I've never seen an internal development team that could do anywhere close to all the things it's being asked to do. And generally, if there's not a product management organization, this becomes a political issue instead of a priorities and strategy issue. So we're going to take this apart. Great. Any questions, drop them into the chat group. If not, we're going to go to the harder part of this. All right. So this, my friends, particularly for those of you who come from the development or technical side of the house, we're going to draw an input-output diagram, because I built this years ago for some of my developers who couldn't understand what product managers do, and this was the best way to do it. And hint, there's a couple places in here where we're going to give books away to the first person with a good answer, all right? And so we're going to start by noticing that, see, I put product management in the middle. It's not at the top. Nobody works for product management. We have no authority. We only have responsibility. And so that means we're going to have to be pretty damn good at convincing people in all the other groups to do what needs to get done, because we're not the boss of them. Okay, so first question, what's the input stuff? What flows from the product management team to the development team? Somebody must know here. And I'm looking for answers in the chat box. David says requirements, not the best answer. Anybody else have a good one? I'll wait. Okay, business case, M.W. Chung, marketing customers maybe, okay. Anybody else? Problems to solve. Okay, David, you don't have a last name on here, but if you contact me out of band, I'll get you a book, all right? So let's fill in the quiz step one here. I'm gonna put a bunch of things here, but here's all the stuff that we wanna be exchanging between product management and the development team. Sometimes I call this the maker team, because it's not just developers, it's designers and DevOps and tech writers and test automation folks. It's all the folks who do real work, right? And first of all, notice I put a two-sided arrow here. And then the things we're going to be exchanging, I put requirements near the bottom actually, right? User stories, backlogs, whatever. The very first most important things we better be exchanging are context about the problem we're solving, and conversations and market views, right? A lot about problem statements instead of solution statements, right? Eventually we get to roadmaps and epics and user stories and backlogs and personas, not the most important things. Actually, for the next book to give away, you guys may know this, but most product managers don't know this. All developers and all designers and all DevOps folks, et cetera, are all smarter than their product managers. And we know this, there's proof of it. So who's going to tell me how we know that every member of the development team is smarter than their product manager? It's an easy one. They aren't signing up to be PMs. Good answer, right? They make things happen, sure. They talk to, maybe they talk directly to customers. I'm going to observe that I know that the developers are all smarter than the product managers, because if I ask them, they tell me they're smarter. And that's really important, because if you're a product manager and you tell your development team what to do, first of all, you're wasting most of the smarts that are available here, right? Yeah, they asked the questions product managers didn't think to give info about. That's good. They provide solutions to problems. Excellent. What's important here is if you're a product manager and you don't harness the smarts of your team, then you're wasting most of what's in your team. So when I see product managers who write requirements first of all, they're usually half wrong, or maybe they're all wrong. And writing requirements means we've taken away from our development team all the opportunity to get a better answer to the problem than my product manager thought of, right? So we want to be focusing first on problem statements and understanding and context, so that we actually get good solutions to the problems, and maybe ones the product manager didn't think of. Really important. Okay, and the stuff that comes back from the development team, anybody know what the development team or the maker team creates and delivers? Product increments, sure. Solutions problems, maybe. I'm going to use a different phrase. I'm going to say what they deliver is the product bits. And I'm being very specific here, because the product bits don't actually make up the product. They are a part of the product. They're an essential element of the product, but there's a lot that goes into the product that doesn't come from the engineering team, doesn't come from development, doesn't come from the makers, right? So let's go to the next group. If you're any company that sells software or much else, I'm pretty sure you have a sales and marketing team. And what does the sales and marketing team want from product managers? Anybody? Roadmap. No, they don't care about roadmap. Something to sell. Sure. What is it? When's the feature available? Right? Timeliness. Yes. Notice all that was about time. And folks on the marketing sales side express their need for time, but what they really want is this. They want what I would call sellable stories, right? Tell us what 25 words we can repeat right off your cheat sheet, such that when we repeat those words to customers, they give us money, right? They want to know segmentation. Okay, who's this for? Big or small customers, domestic or foreign customers, small business, big business, right? They want messages. What do we say? How do we sell it? They want benefits. Honestly, I'll tell you, marketing and sales teams don't care at all about features. I just put them in here for fun. Pricing, demos. Notice that everything on the right is not a one-to-one match for anything on the left, which means if we just give our marketing and sales team the assets that we created on the development side, they don't know what to do with it. They're all about messaging and selling, and they're very uninterested in the details of what the products really do. Okay, next one, and this is the hardest one for the next book, right? Clarity. I like clarity, David, thanks. What do we get back? It's not a trick question, but it's a subtle question. What do we get back from the sales organization back to product management for a book? Marilyn says validation, not so much. Mike says feedback from customers from JF and Rod, right? I'm gonna tell you that we're gonna put it in quotes, input and feedback, but it's a special kind of input and feedback. So let's just pick somebody for a book. I would say, I think Rod got the best close answer there. So we'll take Rod, right? But more importantly, and here's the next quiz for a book, because I've surveyed a tremendous number of enterprise sales teams. When I ask enterprise sales teams the #1 reason why we closed big deals this quarter for a book, somebody tell me what every sales team on the planet tells me when I ask them why we closed big deals. Relationships, Jay says, oh, kind of, sort of, not really. How smart they are, that's that. Ron got it. Now, Ron's already got a book, but we're gonna take Ron's answer. The #1 reason why all sales teams close deals is because they are great salespeople. Not the materials, not the product, not the price. Every salesperson on the planet will tell you that they close deals because they're above average. They close deals because they're convincing and because they're brilliant. When you ask people how we won on the sales side, you get very little useful information other than that they're very self-important and they make twice what I make, right? So Wendy, thanks for value proposition, but they don't care about that, right? Somebody tell me the 2 reasons that every single enterprise sales team on the planet tells me they lost a deal. There's 2 reasons. Bad product, Rachel gets a book. Okay, who else? And JF gets the other cheaper. So we have Rachel and we have JF. So the 2 top reasons every sales team will drag out when we lose a deal is that the price was too high and we're missing a few dozen or 100 or 1,000 features. And the reason I go to such length on this is because so many companies I talk to believe that the way we learn what customers want is we ask our sales team. And my experience here over the last 3.5 decades is that we learn a few things from sales, but mostly what we learn from sales is that they're great salespeople. We should cut our price again, and we're 150 features short, right? And it turns out that's not very useful for figuring out what we're going to build. So the next arrow here, which is the most important one on the chart, is where everyone on my product management team is required to talk directly with real users and real customers and real buyers every week. And by the way, that doesn't include sales calls, right? If you're on a sales call, your job is to help sell. So you don't learn much, but you help bring revenue in. So I insist that every one of my product managers every week is going to be on the phone or on the Zoom or something with at least one real customer or user who really uses our stuff and finds out what's true. Because if we just take feedback from the marketing and sales channel and the support channel, it's very stilted, it's very limited, and we mostly build the wrong stuff. Okay, I'm gonna finish this up real quick so we don't run too long. The third group of folks that product managers deal with are the executives, and every company has them, right? Generally, we're trying to provide to the executives future discussions of money, revenue forecast, commitments, roadmap strategy, and it's all delimited in future money. I teach my product managers that any sentence that comes out of their mouth that isn't denominated in future currency, executives won't hear, right? It's a waste of time. And what we get back from the executive team is usually permission to hire more staff, you know, have some more budgets. The budget's always on the development side, not the product side. And generally they take our targets and our commitments and they just move them forward a couple of quarters. So we're usually late before we arrive, right? But the reason to go through this really complicated diagram is to note that if you're going to sit in a product management job, you actually have to be trilingual. You have to speak enough customer that you can help figure out what they really need. You have to speak enough developer and maker that you don't get disinvited from the stand-ups and made fun of too much in the meetings. And you have to speak enough back of the envelope finance that you can convince your executives to invest in the right things. So it's rather an obscure, odd job. There's nobody born who wants this job, you know, no 5-year-old who tells their parents they want to grow up to be a software product manager, right? But some of us find ourselves here in a very odd place. Okay, we're going to keep going. Jay says, take your time. All right, so the next thing here, and we're sticking on the what does product manager do question, is what I call the good idea train, and here's a picture of it. So the fact of life for every single product manager on the planet is that every single day they get dozens or hundreds or thousands of submitted ideas that the submitters believe are great, new, valid, wonderful, ground-shaking ideas. And they come from everybody, and they come from every channel. So if you've got Slack and there's a, you know, a new ideas channel, it's got 50 items a day, plus the 20 Post-it notes on your computer, plus the phone calls, plus the emails, plus everything else. So what I notice about product managers is they're not short of ideas. They're not even short of decent ideas. And almost every one of those ideas comes from somebody who has universalized it. So a salesperson gets off a call with one customer, and instead of saying, Chase Manhattan Bank needs this weird security protocol, they say, all banks need this weird support or a security protocol. Your support team will always generalize from 2 customers to everyone needs. And so we're faced as product managers with this endless deluge of seemingly good ideas. And they generally arrive at maybe 2 orders of magnitude faster than we can inspect them, because the volume is just so much higher than any number of product managers. And so all the people submitting these believe they're really highly valuable, but there's really not enough time on the other side to do a business case for today's 60 new good ideas. So we're going to do triage in a very rough way, but we're going to appreciate and thank everyone who gave us a good idea today because they went out of their way to do it. So it's important for you to know on the development side or on the agile side that there's a filter here that's about a 96% filter. Almost all the not best ideas aren't working their way through because they just can't fit. There's our good idea train. Okay, one last thing, and this is going to be obvious when I say it, but you may not have thought about it in advance. The product management job is inherently very, very political because, as we know, engineering demand is always, 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 always much bigger than any possible supply. There's proof here, by the way. And if anybody wants to do this experiment, I recommend not. But if you went to the executives at your company and said something like, gee, there's a little bit of space in next week's sprint, we're only about 80% loaded, and you counted on your fingers to 5, your executive team would deliver to you about 22 years worth of work, right? That they're going to think up off the top of their heads. I've never seen an engineering team or a development team that could ever meet the growth supply, both because a lot of it's not good and because there's just too much. So because we can't meet the supply, it's highly political because everybody therefore is going to get into their lobbying mode, right? As product folks, we're always talking about OR trade-offs, exclusive ORs. We could do that, but we'd have to take something else out of equal or larger size. And I've never met an executive of a company who believed that that was true. They always believe the and story. The and story goes something like, yeah, do everything on the roadmap as promised, as committed, and I need this one little thing. Usually it's appended with a phrase like, how hard could it be? It's probably only 10 lines of code, right? We've heard this endlessly. Most of the company doesn't believe in or trade-offs. They only believe in and demands, which doesn't help us, right? The other thing I notice is that if you look at the stakeholders within your company, sales and business unit heads and support and marketing and everybody else, they each have a different set of preferences and biases. Sales teams want what their individual customers asked for. Executives want shiny things that have been mentioned in the Gartner report. Business unit heads want to move revenue forward by shipping products that aren't finished, right? If you work on the support desk, you wish engineering or development would spend 100% of their time fixing bugs. If you're on the engineering and development side, you wish you could free up 50% of your story points for tech debt and reworking and architecture, right? If you're an auditor, you believe the only thing the company needs to do is stay in compliance. So that's really important because I know that every department or function in my company has a list as long as my arm that's individually more than engineering can do, that collectively cannot be met, right? It's impossible. So again, I come back to this being political and highly interactive, because if you think that saying no to your SVP of sales is closing the deal and moving them on, then you haven't met many VPs of sales, right? Okay, whereas the goal of the product management team, and in fact, the whole development and maker team, is to have a healthy product, to have real end user impact, to make money for the company. And that doesn't align with any one stakeholder group. That's really an overall mission such that we're building, you know, healthy products in the long term. I talk a lot about how product management is like raising children. Your little kids don't have a plan for going to university, and they don't want to eat the vegetables before their dessert at dinner time, right? And they don't want to do their homework. They want to go out and play. That's just like all of your stakeholders who have very short-term points of view. If we're going to build a healthy product, we have to have the long-term view for the health of the product and the team, not just what a bunch of people asked us for today. And I'm overemphasizing on purpose. Go.
So Rich, this is Jay. This is your first, interruption. So Jack is asking, how do you convince engineers and executive teams to prioritize features?
First of all, I'm not sure we prioritize features. I think we prioritize outcomes, some of which need features. And I think there's really two different schemes here. So usually I find that my engineers are pretty rational. And so that discussion is all about looking at criteria and business cases and columns and spreadsheets and, you know, sort of sizing the work versus sizing the outcomes and the impact. And it's pretty analytical. When I'm dealing with executives, I don't find that to be true. What I find is we have to present sort of case logic that's built around revenue and customers. So I must say things like, the version 6.5 update that we need to ship this quarter is going to cause us to dramatically reduce the number of tech support calls and dramatically increase the renewal rate because we'll have fixed a bunch of broken stuff, and that's worth 20 million to our company next quarter. And notice I attached money, because if we don't attach money, then nobody wants to play the game. And anybody who has a deal that's worth $50,000 is going to elbow out my $20 million update because I haven't matched the numbers and shown that 20 million is bigger than 50,000. You guys may know that 20 million is bigger than 50,000, but the sales rep who's going to lose his job if he doesn't close that $50,000 deal is going to tell whatever stories are necessary up the chain to the CEO to make this sound really important. So back to the point here, Jack and Jay, I think convincing engineers is really an analytical exercise. Convincing management, convincing executives is as much finesse and presentation and political jujitsu as it is the facts in the business case. And I'd love to tell you that wasn't true, but this is the talk I have with every engineer who thinks that product management's easy. If they can't cut it as an engineer, they'd like to transfer over. Okay, so a couple of big quotes before we wrap this thought. This one's from me. That's why I put my name on it. And it's really important for the rest of this discussion. Everywhere I go, I have people tell me that if development was just 30% faster, we'd get everything we needed to do done. And I know that's a lie, because as we've shown, there's an infinite appetite for more stuff, and much of it doesn't make sense. And it's coming from folks who don't really understand what they're asking for, or have magical thinking about whether it's going to solve a problem. And so I observe that when we build something brilliantly and it's beautiful and it's on time and it's high quality, it does everything it should do and the workflows are perfect, and nobody buys it, or it doesn't deliver real measurable benefit for the company and the customers, it's not a development failure. It's a product failure. Because who's been supposed to prioritize the stuff and do the business cases and figure out what problems we're solving? Product does. Yet engineering or development gets blamed all the time as if this is a throughput problem. Notice that if half of the things we built were wasted because they weren't well thought out, or they don't solve a problem, or nobody's going to pay for them, we could have doubled the throughput of engineering by not building wasteful and useless stuff, right? And I find that on the product side, we can usually get 20 or 30% more out of the development process simply by discarding stuff and being smarter about prioritization and holding the executives' feet to their fire to let us finish something, right? Now, of course, everything we do in the Agile cycle to make our development team better and smarter and taller and able to run a 2-minute mile is, of course, important and valuable, but that's not the product problem. That's the development and the Agile problem. Okay, let's keep going. If you don't believe me, here's Alex Osterwalder, who built the business model canvas, and he reminds us every day that customers are experts in what they want to achieve, not how to achieve it. When we translate that into product management speak, what we say is, customers are always telling us what to do. They're always writing us requirements. They're always putting demands on us. But for the most part, we have to be deeply suspicious about every solution that a customer presents to us, because almost always they got it wrong. And so as product folks, we spend a lot of time unpacking the problem that the customer thinks their fix is going to address. And we spend a lot of time asking about jobs to be done and discovery and validation. And we bring our developers and designers along with us, because mostly what customers ask for is the wrong stuff until we unpack it down to problems to be solved. So again, this is going to be important in a minute when we get to the classic narrow definition of product owner. If it's somebody who writes down what a customer wants and then carries it over to development, that's the definition of waste for me. Okay, I'm going to take a breath here because we're about to transition from what product managers do and why customer insight is so important to Agile as a process. Okay, how do we make product management profession a prestigious one? Good question, Maria. Not authority. Well, that's a good question. It's almost always transmitted from the top. So if we have an executive team that understands that product management's important, then they lend the product managers some authority, and they back them up when there's escalations from other parts of the company. But inherently, it's a tough job because we don't have any authority. So folks who wander into product management and think they're the boss of something, now it's a long chat to have, right? All executives are product managers. Well, no, they're not, but they believe they are. Okay, let's keep going because we want to value people's time here. Good. All right, so let's talk about development. And again, this is a development metaphor. I wrote COBOL back in the 80s, so I get to say this. All right, so this is a picture many of you have seen. It's from Mike Cohen's 2005 book on Scrum, right? So this is the classic Scrum Agile picture, and I lifted it directly with attribution. And I'm going to put this in the middle of a process because I think it misses almost everything we just talked about. Notice that it assumes a product backlog, and more than that, it assumes a product strategy and customers and validation and an economic model and how we're going to sell it and all these things. And on the far side, we have potentially shippable product increment, which is great, but it assumes somebody's going to be in charge of deciding when we ship it and why, and how to know whether it's good enough to ship, right? So let's put the outer loop around this, which I'm going to call product management. So on the left side, right, this is everything we should be doing before we start developing anything, right? Again, if we're trying to avoid waste, the biggest waste we can have is to have a team spend $1 million in a year building something and then figuring out nobody wants it, or we can't sell it, or the competition's going to crush us. So coming into the process, we really need somebody, who I'm going to call product management just for fun, to have interviewed lots of customers and done market analysis and built some business cases so we know whether we can earn enough money on this, and fit it into a product strategy and a portfolio strategy and a pricing strategy, and getting somebody in the company to agree to pay for it, right? If we haven't done that work, we collectively, then I don't think we want to start a serious software development effort. We might start an experiment, we might start some hackathons, but if we haven't answered these questions, then almost everything that follows here is probably half wrong, and I don't know which half, right? And coming out the other side, there's a lot of things we must do after or while we're building bits and building software, right? If we don't have stories for customers, if we don't have a sales force that's trained and motivated and commissioned for selling this stuff, if we don't have good messages for marketing and ways to onboard customers and a support team, everybody forgets that we want to end of life products when they are no longer making money or useful, right? All of the things on the outer loop here are things that are necessary for the inner loop to actually deliver value. I see a lot of teams that have fake or silly value points. Forgive me if I'm insulting anybody, but lots of teams create these value metrics where they simply match story points to something they call value. No, not allowed. Value is generated by customers when they use our products to either make money or save money or pay us money or solve some problem in the world. And if we don't know how to measure that, and we come up with fake metrics on the inside so we can feel good about value, then your product management team has failed you, right? Not an easy test. All right, so, because I'm talking about Agile here, let me give you my few markers, because I spend a lot of time, and I'm just gonna call Ron Lichty out for a second, because he and I partner a lot, where he's the person people call to, among many of you, to fix their Agile processes. I'm the one they call to fix the outer loop product processes here. We do that together. So things I'm always looking for in a strong Agile organization. Notice I'm never going to say Scrum here because I don't care about Scrum, except if it's the choice the team needs, right? And we're going to step through these in turn. First, most important thing, and this comes right out of Agile 101, Agile Manifesto. If my company has a stable team, a whole team, we've got test automation and DevOps and tech writers and designers on the team, right? And that they're tied to a customer value stream. I hate when I drop into a company and there's a front end team, a back end team, a machine learning team, and some other team, because no one of those teams can actually deliver any customer value. And every piece of work has to pull 3 or 6 teams and get things on 3 or 6 roadmaps and 3 or 6 sets of stories, right? So if we're not doing this, which for me is the Agile Basic 101, right, we don't get to move ahead, right? Second thing for me, I believe product managers and their teams, notice the and here, are gonna learn directly from users. And proxies for me, you'll see I call proxies a 4-letter word. Proxies means we didn't talk to customers, we read the Salesforce notes in Salesforce. We don't talk to customers, we got some notes from our support and implementation team. We don't talk to customers ourselves, we got a survey out of marketing. We don't talk to customers, we got a report from Gartner. If those product managers work for me, they either shape up or I promote them to some other job in the company that's not a product job, because you're not a product manager if you're not talking directly with the real people who use your stuff, and bring your team along into those calls to hear what people say. By the way, no development team wants to hear it just from their product manager. They really want to channel the true voices of real users. That's how we motivate ourselves. Okay, let's keep going. And we talked about it briefly. The team works on the problem, not just the solution. I, as the product manager, bring forward my best guess to map out that problem. The team's smarter than I am, so they're almost always helping me understand that the problem is a little different than I framed it. And we all brainstorm solutions. And we find some good ones because the smart folks in the room have better solutions than I do. If I just write requirements, I'm wasting all the talent on my team. All right, let's keep going. Objectives. Objectives are about end user behavior changes. Did people use the new features and did it lead them to save money or save lives, right? When we measure delivery dates, we're calling value that we shipped something. That's not good enough for product managers. Product managers need us to say that we got value and we have objectives because real customers are buying our product. Real customers are renewing at a higher rate. Real customers are calling our support line less often. Real customers are using the integrations we built to partners. If it doesn't lead to some measurable change of behavior on the part of somebody else outside the team, then it's fake. All right, let's keep going. Frequent process retrospectives and experiments. Of course, we all say we do this. I don't see a lot of teams doing it, but hopefully all of you are coaching them. And most importantly, we have experiments. We build some stuff, we try it, we don't like it, we throw away. We try some new tools, we don't like it, we replace them. We are the masters of our own process and our own retrospectives, and it makes us better and stronger and smarter. Last couple here. I'm a bigot for automated test suites. I believe any company that spends much money on manual testing is throwing that money down the drain. Because if we spend on the automated testing, we get to do all the important throughput things like having those tests run 100 times a day every time somebody wants to exercise a new piece of code. And I'm not a believer in a test team that writes tests and a development team that doesn't write tests. I think that's second-class citizens. I think that's poor work, and I don't see good quality come out of it. So on my teams, at least my development teams, everybody writes tests. Everybody's a first-class citizen. We may have some folks who are experts at test automation, but I go out of my way to avoid having a test team, particularly one that's 1 or 2 sprints behind, right? Not okay. And then the last thing, which every coach and every Agile team should be thinking about, which is trust. If my team doesn't trust me as a product manager, it doesn't matter what else I get, right? So this is a hard thing to do, a high bar. But everywhere I go, I see folks who picked up the Scrum book with no help, with no coaching, with no experience, did what the Scrum book said, and they're all doing cargo cult. They're all doing the activities, but they don't understand why they are important. All right, we're running pretty long here, so I'm going to apologize and just keep going. All right, so product managers, product owners, let's take this apart a little bit. Here's a funny little animation I built some years ago with a generic Scrum Agile cycle. And somebody for a book is going to tell me what the very first step is. Anybody tell me what the first step is? Have a box, background grooming. Nope, you got a lot. Okay. Discovery, John says discovery. Okay, even before discovery is good. I'm going to tell you the very first step is we figure out what this team's supposed to do. And you might call it a charter or anything else you want to call it. But if we don't have a mission for this team, if we don't have a goal for this team, we're going to be way off track, right? So Francisco gets a book here, Vision or Visio. So Francisco, we'll catch up with you later, right? So before we form the team, we should have some idea of what kinds of classes of problems we're going to solve. Otherwise, maybe it's not worth having a team. Okay, I'm going to click through the rest of this really fast, right? You might put a product backlog together with an infinite list of stuff for the next few centuries. And you do some release planning and you do some release backlogs, right? And then you do some sprint planning and do some sprint backlogs. You might do a daily stand-up. I find that almost nobody can tell me why they do daily stand-ups. Okay, for a book, why do we do daily stand-ups? Not because the alignment. Good, Maria gets a book here, right? Anybody else have a good answer? keep on track, sure. I find that most of the members of my team don't have a plan when they come in the morning, right? Yeah, inspecting's good, determining is what's good. Most of my developers come in and they don't actually know what they're going to do today. And so it's really handy to spend 5 minutes and everybody gets a little clarity, right? Know why these things are important. All right, after that, we have some stories accepted, that's done. Maybe if we have defined done, we do some retros and reviews at the sprint level, right? We're gonna have a stack of potentially releasable software at some point, right, for the next book. The next thing here is software released or released software. Somebody needs to tell me what the difference is between potentially releasable software and released software. Apollo says demo. Jay has the right answer, but I'm going to wait for somebody else to give it to me, right? Some features are missing. No. Prototype, nope. Increment versus product, nope. Demo acceptance, nope. Value, nope. There is no difference between the potentially releasable software and the released software other than, and Wendy's close, accepted by client, but I'm going to back off from that because Wendy, that assumes you have only one client. And then you're not in the product business, you're in the professional services business, right? Deployed, nope. The only difference is that somebody in charge, who is the product manager, declared that today we're going to take the potentially releasable software and we're going to move it to a new state called released, right? So there's a whole bunch of decisions to make there. Product managers sometimes do this wrong, but the only difference from one box and the other is we have put a wrapper around it. If the stuff is potentially releasable, but it doesn't work, then it's not potentially releasable, right? The words mean at any moment, we can simply declare it to be done. And the person who declares it to be done is the product manager. Based on some, yes, market sense and value, and people are demanding it, right? Let's keep going. All right, so, and good to have a release retrospective. Okay, so now let's draw a couple of other boxes on this. And here's where I'm gonna get religious, so I apologize. I'm gonna put the box around this that is the narrow Scrum owner view. Not that I like it, but if you just read the Scrum book and you say, well, what do Scrum product owners do? Here's what they do. They do sprint planning, they do backlog grooming, they write some stories, they accept some stories, and they sit in the retrospective. Notice that they don't do any of the outlying stuff that I'm claiming is what drives product success, right? They're focused on velocity, they're focused on the one team, and they're focused on the current sprint, right? And their goal often is to increase velocity. And if you heard me for the last half hour, you know that I'm less concerned with velocity than value. And what that means is that if there's a product manager, and there may not be, the product manager's got to fill in the outer loop here. Do we know who it's for? Do we know why they're going to pay us? What about competition? What about stories? What about, you know, vignettes and benefits? And how are we going to fit this into our new portfolio? I would claim that both of these shapes are broken, because when we do this, the product owner is out of touch with real customers, and the product manager is out of touch with what it means to really build stuff, and it's probably driving bad decisions and bad trade-offs. So when I see this particular breakdown of responsibilities, I'm pretty sure that unless the product manager and the product owner do the Vulcan mind meld twice a day, we have a lot of waste and a lot of frustration. And I blame the product managers as much as anybody. This isn't about blame, this is about identifying root issues. Okay, so if we come back to this, remember this chart, what does the product manager do? I'm gonna draw the same chart. Again, I'm gonna apologize in advance. Anybody who's a product owner and feels like I'm picking on them, I'm not. I'm picking on the way your job is defined, not all the good value you add when you're doing more than what your job is defined. So when I put up the same chart for product owner, and I'm going to use small p because small p product owner for me is just what's in the book, not what the company needs, not what the customers need, but what does the book tell us to do? And here's what the book tells us to do. Team level priorities, epics and user stories and backlogs. Now, I don't know how you do priorities if you don't talk to customers a lot. Somebody else is really setting the priorities, but that's your job. And what you get back is software bits and you accept the story. Notice my definition here is if we do just this job, we're probably wasting an awful lot of this development cycle. Okay, so let's keep going. So here's my handoffs and my 4-letter word, right? everywhere where I see proxies, and it's written into a lot of the Scrum materials, everywhere I see proxies, I assume we're dropping the baton, we're getting incomplete specs, we're getting half stories, we're failing to talk to people about their real issues, and we're building the wrong stuff, which is my definition of waste, right? We're reading somebody else's sparse comments when they weren't thinking clearly, right? Instead, we want user stories to be a conversation between, on one side, the product manager and the team, and on the other side, the real people who are going to use stuff. Right? So it's passion for me because I see so much frustration and waste. And if you're a product owner and you can do the right thing, then I'm all for you. If I drop into your company, I'm going to promote you and give you a raise and call you a product manager. But I don't care what the titles are. And if we come back to that other chart one more time, what's really important for me is here is where I see most product failures happen. Most people would say it's in the development cycle. I don't believe that for a minute. Most of the waste, most of the failures, most of the complete dead ends I see are failure to build the right thing, not failure to build it well or right. And so if we as Agilists are just in the inner loop here, we're subject to huge waste at a much higher level than just the performance of our team and the velocity and quality of our team. Now, you may not have the power to change that, but it's important for me to highlight where I think this is broken. Okay, so last thought on this, and then we're going to wrap and have some questions. Anybody who doesn't recognize the Twitter fail whale here. Again, I'll say I love product folks. I've been one for a long time. I look out for them, I champion them. I don't care what their title is. But if you're doing only what the Scrum book says your product owner job is, I think you're failing. Because here's the things you do. You write stories, you accept stories, you do team level backlog. By the way, every book says you have to be available to the team at all times. And I'm scratching my head here asking, how would I put a product owner out on the road for 3 days to meet some customers and see what they really do? Can't do it if you have to be available 24/7. The definition takes it away. And here's the things that we don't ask product owners to do. We let them have everybody else be proxies and stakeholders and tell them what the problems are. Not good. We almost never have time and training and rewards for making product owners get out and meet real end users. In fact, we dissuade them. We tell them it's not their job. We have them focus on productivity, not value. Again, my distinction here really carefully. If end users don't put our stuff into use, even though we hope they would, then there's no value. And probably most poisonous for me, I see most product owners assigned long after all the hard decisions have been made. We already funded it, we already put a team together, we already decided on the delivery date, we already have high-level specs, and we put a product owner in there to make stuff happen that we've already called out. I think we're underusing and underutilizing all the smarts of our product owners and our teams when we put ourselves in these small boxes, right? Again, it's not that I think product owners are bad. I think the way we define their job is bad. And so my takeaway here, I think product owner is a partial role. It's not a job. So wrapping up here in my organizations, and again, just for clarity, I parachute into companies to fix product management teams. I've done 10 of those assignments, which is scary because it shows poor learning on my part, right? But everybody on my team is going to do some product owner work, but nobody on my team is going to only do product owner work. Everybody who works for me is going to spend half their time, roughly-ish, working with their team on specs and stories and problems and all those things. And they're going to have a tight emotional relationship with their one team, and they're going to share long-term success with their one team, but it's not enough. The other half of their time, right? Yeah, so sorry, Ron, go get them. The other half of every single person's time is they have to be on the discovery and validation side. We have to make sure what we're building matters. It's learning, it's jobs to be done, it's product strategy, it's economics, it's interviewing endless numbers of customers so that we can be truly clear about what problems we're solving. And that's separate from selling. If I'm on a sales call, I'm not learning, I'm selling, right? Let's keep going, right? And so every one of my product managers is doing half and half. Every one of them is dealing with overwhelming demand. Every one of them has unaligned stakeholders and has hard trade-offs. But that's what we do. in order to make sure we're getting more of the right things done. And then we lean heavily on our teams, because they're all smarter than us and work harder than us, and many of them get paid more, to collectively build them in the right way, with the right processes, with the right outcomes, with good quality, with great design. Product managers don't have to do all the building, right? We have great teams for that. And we bring them in, and we bring our teams in so they're emotionally committed and they understand. Okay, let's do a couple of takeaways, because I'm running long, and then we'll do as much Q&A as folks would like. All right, so product management focuses on building the right things, right? End user value, impact. If we don't know how to measure value, then we shouldn't build it, right? And we're measured on outcomes. Did we drive revenue? Did we drive customer satisfaction? Did we reduce support loads? Did we speed up implementations? Not on delivery dates. Delivery dates are fine, they're handy, but it's not what we're paid to do. All right. The Agile development teams, and I'm putting development in parentheses here just so we're clear, is really focused on building the things right, because it assumes we got an audience defined. It assumes we know how to measure value. It assumes there's a product and market strategy. I put some waffle words in here. No priority scheme ever survives a sales organization, but there's got to be some stability to what we're building, or we never finish anything. So those are the things that if your product management organization isn't delivering, then you as a development team should be very worried about outcomes, right? Last couple things, right? Biggest source of waste for me is finishing things that don't matter, right? Everybody else looks at engineering and development and says they want more faster. That's not my point of view. My point of view is we should get twice as much useful work by eliminating the less useful work and focusing on what matters, right? All Agilists know we want to start fewer things and finish more of them, right? Last, again, I think the Scrum product owner definition is fatally flawed. So it's not a function of the people in those jobs. It's a function of how we define those jobs, so they're in the wrong box. And then, of course, the last takeaway here, we all have to work together, right? Product managers fail by themselves. Development teams without good product management build a lot of the wrong stuff. If we're going to build great software, we got to put our heads together, right? Okay, so here's how to find me. My dog didn't join today, but that's life. So I'm going to go back to the takeaways for just a minute and then throw the ball back to Jay. And let's see, folks are welcome to stay on as long as they want, but I understand everybody's got other places to be. So let's quit sharing. Fire when ready. Oh, everybody who got a book, you're going to have to drop me a note with your email address or somehow a way to contact you, or I can't get bits to you.
Well, thank you, Rich.
Sure, Jay, go.
So I do want to point out that the World Economic Forum just released a report this year, at the beginning of this year, and the #1 job in the world right now is product leadership or product management. And they defined it basically what Rich just said. And that is the world. The world is changing into that, and the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that embrace and adopt what Rich just eloquently articulated.
Easier said.
Exactly, but that is the future that they see, right? So that there's an evidence body that supports Rich's ideas. I support Rich's ideas from my experience as well. And we're trying to make this journey for everybody. So now I'm going to do an experiment. We got 26 people. Wow. I'm going to open it up for questions. We have a few questions here. So I'm going to let the questions, I'm going to go with Mike Lawfer. So let me unmute everyone. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to mute everyone. So Mike, you had a question. How do you find product owner and product managers similar to how they do in SAFe? Oh, a Dean Fellow person. Do you think that this is a valid comparison?
Are we still recording?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this. I'm going to just say this politely. Okay.
All right.
I think SAFe solves a problem that I'm not sure anyone has. Right. And I believe that everything about SAFe is almost in opposition to building good product based on value. I think it's all about the manufacturing cycle of releases and coordination and dependencies, and I see very little in SAFe that actually addresses real market value. And so I worry that I'm perfectly happy if you want to go to SAFe, but I think nothing in SAFe addresses any product issues as I see them.
Mike, do you have any comment?
No, I love hearing that, because when I went through my SAFe training, I felt similarly, is that it's not addressing building value very well. It is much more addressing the manufacturing, as you say. No, that's right. I like your answer. Thank you.
And for organizations that believe the problem is that manufacturing isn't fast enough, then SAFe may be an issue. But wearing my product hat, that's not the problem. I rarely see that problem. The problem I see is that we're building the wrong stuff, and we're not being thoughtful and careful and doing our homework before we spend the 20 million on SAFe.
Cool. So I'm going to move to M.W. Chung. I keep telling my product management team what you said. They keep telling me that all those responsibilities is too much for one person to do.
We'll get some more. The difference though, so my comeback on that, yes, it's a really hard job. Yes, your product management team is probably understaffed, but the way we divide the problem really matters. So I divide the problem by having smaller bits of value that are assigned to each team and a product manager on every team. And every product manager has half inward product owner and half outward value, rather than saying, well, this is hard, so we're going to have product owners who never talk to customers, and we're going to have product managers who never talk to teams and product owners, right? When you divide the work that way, I think you get lousy results. So sure, they're understaffed, but the answer isn't, so we won't do the market work. The answer is, let's get more staff and divide the work up so everyone is focused on value instead of just focused on velocity, right? That's an organizational problem as much as it is a staffing problem.
So
stop whining.
M.W. Chung, any response?
Thanks, perfect. Okay, who's next?
No response. So David.
Oh, he gave us a chat that said thanks.
Oh, cool. Thank you. David said, what's your game plan roadmap when you parachute in? How much time is everything? How much time planning? But he started, that sounds like a consulting engagement.
It is a consulting. It's usually 3 to 6 months of 80% time. The secret is nobody calls me for that when it's going well. And it's usually not going well at the executive level, right? So when I parachute in, it's almost never a problem at the sprint level. It's never a problem with individual development teams. It's almost never a problem with individual product managers. It's about the organization working sideways against itself, right? So a lot of this is about the 57 ways I can convince the executive team not to think they're the product managers and have a new good idea every 4 hours that causes us to drop what we started 4 hours ago, right? Yeah. That's an executive product problem. Likewise, we can't say, well, customer X asked for something, and so we're gonna put it in the roadmap, right? That's a false story. So product at the executive level is about pushing back on all of the stakeholders who think they're product people and that we have infinite capacity, and they had a good idea in the shower this morning.
Cool. So Dan, I'm going to screw this up. Balakowski, how do you handle other department executives that want a say in how the solution is designed?
I think everybody's welcome to their opinion. That's different from that they're as good as the architects at architecture and they're as good as the designers at design, right? So everybody's got an opinion. When it's time to choose, the product folks need to hold back the chaos so that the team can actually build good stuff. And if they can't do that, we need to get them help or replace them or replace the folks in the other departments. There's no excuse for some sales exec leaning in and saying, I don't like it, make the logo bigger and make the background green. Now, that's hard to do, but you have to recognize that the problem is that we're confusing input from decision making.
That's good.
Yeah.
So Dan, do you have any follow-up?
And take yourself off mute if you want, Dan.
Yeah.
No,
excellent.
Let's go next.
Oh, I was going to say, excellent answer, Rich. Thank you for that feedback and thank you for the presentation. It was excellent.
Good. Go. Who's next?
So then the next one is from Michael. when searching a job market, I see tons of opening for Scrum Masters, not as many Agile. Do companies nearly really know what they need? Do you mean like Agile product managers, product owners? Michael Sequin.
I'll just
Yeah.
answer.
Go ahead,
Michael.
sir.
Yeah.
Well, I was just
would
going to
tell you,
say, based on what you just presented, it seems like all the people looking for Scrum Masters, they're skipping a bunch of very important steps.
well, I think Scrum Masters are really important, but I don't think Scrum Masters are product managers, right? If you think your Scrum Masters or product manager, you are in a world of hurt, right? They're different jobs in the same way that developers aren't designers, and we should know which one we're trying to hire for, right?
Right.
Companies that don't understand product management, and that's most of them, do some random dance where they pick some book off the shelf and they say, oh, somebody told me that it's a product owner, somebody told me it's a Scrum Master, somebody told me that the development team gets to nominate their own product person to make decisions. And nobody on that team's ever been trained to talk with the customer or do interviews, right? There's lots of ways to get to the wrong jobs and the wrong titles and the wrong people. I've seen them all, but not okay, right? That's the right answer can't be, we don't know what it is, so we wrote a job description for the wrong thing. Most of my calls are usually 2 years after that, because they wasted 2 years building a lot of stuff that never shipped and never got sold and never got finished, and they still don't know why.
That's fair.
And they continue to blame engineering or development, because if development were smarter and better, we would have finished it all sooner and thrown it away sooner.
They're
Who's
just
next?
okay. Thank
Go
you.
ahead. No, Michael, go ahead. You have a question?
Oh no, I'm good. I appreciate the response. Thank you, Rich. Thanks, Jay.
Okay. And Gopal says, how do you structure ideas into pieces that can be consumed? I've used initiatives, epics, features, stories, tasks. Do you recommend? I don't care what we call these things. In fact, I'd go the other way. I'd say, at least if you're in a small organization, you and your team should get together and decide what you call stuff. And I don't care what the name is. I usually stay away from epics, and because epics are overloaded with all kinds of tooling, and you go into Jira and they've decided what an epic is. So give it another name. But this is about value. This is not about what you call stuff, right? We call them strawberries. We call them bananas. We call them, I don't care what we call them, right? But how do we connect the larger of those, the epics or the initiatives or the features, to a real problem with a really good customer side description? I don't care if you want to use the phrase as a user, doesn't matter to me, right? But we better really deeply understand the problem we're solving and why it solves it, or the stories I write are probably worthless. I observe, by the way, some first-time product managers think their job is to write Jira tickets. And I observe that writing Jira tickets isn't any damn use unless the Jira tickets we write reflect real customer problems and value. And if we're grading them on grammar, oh, you forgot to use the phrase as a user, right? I don't care what phrase we use. What I care is when the team reads this thing and we sit down and talk about it, everybody on the team understands what the problem is, and we've heard some customers tell us about it, because that's where goodness comes from.
Very good.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay.
Paul. And then Francisco.
Maria. Go ahead, Francisco.
Maria?
Picture created from Scrum simulation, Lego for Scrum, shows the work required up front before sprinting. I'll just open up this picture that's in the chat box. Sure, okay. So I would tell you I agree 100% with that chart. You just saw it, but I don't see it in most of the introductory Scrum books. I see everybody skipping to writing stories and sizing stories, right? And that's great, that's important stuff to do. But if we're sizing the wrong stories and the stories are worthless, not so good. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, because what you presented today really resonated with my own experience, where a lot of agile teams get put together, and the first thing is let's start sprinting, but there's a whole lot of pre-work.
There's a whole lot.
So just something I wanted to share because that really resonated. So thank you.
Perfect. A really brief war story here. I'm doing some work with a really cool company out of Auckland, New Zealand, that builds software for churches. and it manages remote donations and a few other things and event notifications for churches. And they had on their roadmap for this quarter a really important feature that would let folks who bring their kids to church check the kids into the little daycare or kid lookout. Well, it turns out that's not going to be an important feature this quarter because all over the world, people are not going to big meetings. So they've rearranged their roadmap to move some stuff to the forward where members of those churches or mosques or synagogues or whatever can ask for somebody to bring them food or give them help, right? That's called agile for me, right? We get out of our own way. We don't really care what's on the roadmap if it's wrong. We don't care what it's called. Are we delivering value this week to customers? Good.
That's good. And then Maria Breiter, so she's bringing up the OKR thing here. So what's your opinion on distributed teams and all that?
I'll just read it out. What's your opinion on distributed teams where product managers are in the US and development teams offshore without any direct access to customers? They have a proxy product owner. They have the wrong OKRs. So as you may have suspected, I'm not excited about that model, right? I'd be much more excited to say that the really smarter folks who are based in the US empower and promote some of the folks on the remote teams, the distributed teams, from product owner to product manager. They give them a big raise. They give them access to real customers. We cut out a bunch of loops and steps and handoffs and baton passes. And we have real product management out where the real development teams are. Because I'm told, I don't know if you guys know this, but Zoom lets you talk to customers almost anywhere. Right? And so I'm all for putting teams wherever the talent is, but that's got to include real product work, not this sort of shadow proxy, blah, blah, blah thing, right? Because then the product owners out in the distributed teams aren't any better informed than anybody else, and they're taking orders for what's probably half wrong.
Very good. And then let's go to
Tanner.
Tanner, yeah.
Okay, Tanner says, I work on a product management team as a project manager. Our product manager works with dev teams that include product owners and scrum masters. What recommendations do you have so there's no overlap of roles? So I think there's too many things here. I often see that organizations either have scrum masters or project managers, although those jobs aren't exactly the same. And I see some who have both product owners and product managers, and I try to wipe those away. Everybody who's good gets promoted to whatever the better title is. You know, if you've got a lot of overlapping roles, the problem isn't what we call them. The problem is that we have overlapping roles and we haven't thought clearly about what people do.
Which is good. So I'll finish up with the last catch. We kind of skipped over Wendy, which is very appropriate today. Is like there's a lot of job openings listed under project management, focus on project management.
Yep.
So it certainly seems that there's either one person to do both roles. I've seen that a lot.
No, I don't.
Scrum manager, Scrum master, project manager, you know, product owner. So
Yeah.
what's your take on?
So here's my take. I believe a project or program management is a real thing. It's an important thing. It's a critical thing. But I don't believe it's product management. And here's my concern. If we're building for only one client, so let's call ourselves a development shop, a contract development shop, a body shop, whatever we call it, right? If we have a contract to deliver to exactly one customer, what the one customer has spec'd for us, then project management is the most important thing. Because we have to deliver it on time, on budget, otherwise they're gonna fire us. And we don't actually know whether it's going to deliver any value downstream. All we know is that we get paid when we deliver it. And it's on the client to have spec'd out something that they believe is valuable. And by the way, if we build something for them on spec and they don't use it or it's not useful or they don't like it, they still have to pay us. So in the project world, in the custom development world, in the outsourcing world, we're almost always doing project and program management. We don't need any damn product managers. We're not asking the question of who wants what. We're doing what we're told on time, on budget. Now, if you're a product manager, it's because you have a product. And for me, the definition of a product is we're going to sell it to 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 customers, and we're going to sell the same bits. Because the way you make money in the software business is you build it once and you sell it many, many, many times, because the second copy is free. And so the product managers worry that we're going to build it for one customer. We're going to sell it for less than it cost us to build it. We're going to lose money, right? Because in the product business, we don't start building it until we know there's 100 or 1,000 customers for it, and we can beat break even. Because we don't sell in the product business for our development cost. Go buy a Fitbit for what the Fitbit folks spent building it? I don't think so. It's 20 bucks, right? Go use Campaign Monitor for $29 a month. That's a product, because they're spending $40 million a year building it, but they don't charge anybody $40 million to use it. They need 10 million customers, right? So in the product business, you have project or program managers worried about getting stuff out the door. You have product managers worrying that the thing we're going to ship is economically viable and will support the company. Different jobs, important jobs. We love each other, but we're not the same folks.
Well, thank you, Rich. I think we're out of questions.
We are.
And I thank you very much for your volunteerism and to do this. I think this is very informative. So I'm going to stop the recording here soon, but what we're going to do is we're going to record this and share it with everybody in the world, and then see how the exciting response that we have from that. So thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Great.
I'm going to stop recording.